Here he is speaking directly to all the kind of Tommy Robinson patriotic alternative lot, and he knows it. He just doesn't care. So you've got that flag there, a white Pendragon.
In Clapham Common. That fucking camera.
There it is there with the patriotic alternative. So he knows what he's doing here. And so if we come back to this number 7, Haiku, is similar to the case of Atli Yarrow and the SPUSA after his expulsion. And the response in defense of Haiku is, after his expulsion, Atli Yarrow joined a white nationalist group in the USA, hardly comparable to Haiku, who has continued to passionately argue for Marxism. To compare him to a fascist and call him a megalomaniac is simply slander. So that was like about a decade ago, where someone compared him to someone who was removed from the left and then they went straight to a white nationalist group. That is exactly the same. And it's not slander. Like, he's literally just done that. And when I read that from 10 years ago, it was like, whoa, this just confirms everything that I've been saying about Haiku since the vigil. Like, what the hell? And then shortly after the vigil, I was going back onto live streams again to discuss what happened there on the free speech live streams that I used to go to onto, which were all connected to Speaker's Corner. And the words from Ralph Masalamani were very, very eye-opening. So listen to this.
Yes.
Riot.
What's wrong with using political protests and hijacking them?
What's wrong with using a silent vigil where people are
all
grieving?
Sorts of things. People right now.
Silent vigil where people are grieving is not somewhere to politicize. That is exactly what the far right claimed when they blamed it on Antifa.
But
so I'm holding the far right to their own standards, and it is fucking disrespectful as fuck to go to a silent vigil and expect your voice to be heard and to be able to promote your fucking March the 20th NRX PSYOP.
But listen, all the people who went there disagreed with you, right?
No, they didn't. All the people that went there
they all went there
agreed with me because they removed Haiku from the fucking stage first, and then once it got dark and people took it. Haiku did his job. Haiku did a good job.
Haiku knew what his job was.
The chaos and the darkness. Haiku knew what his job was, and Haiku did a fantastic job.
I'm a neo-reactionary absolutist. I believe in a absolute world order, organized in a particular way.
When you're looking at a government is a corporation that owns a country. It just is. It's the same thing.
I'm Peter Thiel. I support people who are building new things. I'm not a politician, but neither is Donald Trump. And it's time to rebuild America.
Anything we can do to help this go along, and we're going to be there for you. And you'll call my people, you'll call me. It doesn't make any difference. We have no formal chain of command.
Welcome to another episode of Fascists Beware. Today we're going to be looking at a guy called Heiko Khoo. Heiko Khoo was one of the people who was directly responsible for the chaos at Silent Vigil on Clapham Common last year.
Dr. Heiko Khoo addressing the crowd.
I would like to make a short speech.
Here he is making a speech when for the hours previous to this, everything had been silent.
Initially called as a silent vigil, but the police and the courts banned us from protesting.
And the reason why I'm starting off with this is because it's not the first time he's used women's issues for his own benefit and his own political agenda. in quite in sickening ways. Like, I thought this was kind of very sickening for him to do this, and agreed with by the crowd. As you can hear, they're just shouting him down now. Here he is with Patsy Stevenson. After he'd been removed once that first time, the crowd shouted him down, and the police kind of moved him away. Here he is speaking into Haiku Patsy's ear. Jumps down into the bed of flowers in order to share the Anyway, we'll get back into that a little bit more later. So that's the first time I was aware that he used a woman's issue for his own political agenda, as he's promoting his anti-lockdown agenda. But it was back in March the 5th, or 2010, around it seems like this was a long going issue, where he was a member of the International Marxist Tendency. This is a global Marxist organization. I don't have anything to do with this group. Like I say, I just found this while I was researching Heiko Khoo. But let's just have a little read of what went on here. So, for those who don't know, Khoo is a prolific speaker at Speaker's Corner and longtime Marxist activist who witnessed the fall of the Berlin Wall. He writes the blog China Reporting, which the last post on it here is said to be the one which has got him into hot water with the leaders of the IMT, the International Marxist Tendency. And according to Haiku on his Facebook page, he exposed the inability of the leadership to research and investigate the facts and explain developments from a Marxist standpoint. The inability of the leadership to respond to Marxist analysis led them to begin a campaign against me over a year ago, which has finally culminated in my expulsion. So basically, there was this big, long article that he wrote, and they wanted to put it onto this Marxist website, and they had this democratic process where they democratically disagreed with with parts of his article, and they changed it. And Haiku didn't raise that issue democratically with the organization. So the following was passed at the IEC on Thursday and is exposed for the information of all comrades. For many months, the international and sorry, this is going to be a bit of a boring start, but it will show a pattern of behavior of why we're seeing him behave in the way that he does today at the anti-lockdown protests. So just bear with me for a few minutes. So for many months, the International has been subjected to a systematic campaign of harassment and intimidation organized by Heiko Khoo. This campaign, allegedly intended to inform the membership of the International, is in fact based on an avalanche of lies, insults, slander and disinformation. It is calculated to create the maximum confusion, disrupt our work and demoralize comrades. These attacks on the International have been deliberately introduced into the public domain, where they are being used by our enemies to blacken the name of the International. The only effect of this campaign has been to cause resignations, damage the work in a number of sections, and assist our enemy. In the face of gross, deliberate, and repeated provocations, the International has shown extraordinary patience and restraint. But all things have their limit. We have made repeated requests to Heiko Khoo to desist from his disruptive actions. He has had every opportunity to make use of the democratic channels of the organization to put forward his ideas. But he has not used these channels, and all our appeals have been cynically ignored. These actions show a complete contempt for the most elementary norms of revolutionary morality and discipline. The exact motivation behind Heiko Khoo's activities remains obscure, but we can say that they constitute a deliberate and systematic sabotage of the work of the revolutionary tendency. Whether Heiko Khoo is conscious or not, such activities are indistinguishable from the work of a provocateur who seeks to destroy the organization from within. The International has the right to defend itself against sabotage and provocation. We therefore resolve that Heiko Khoo is expelled from our ranks with immediate effect, 4th of March 2010. So, in this article, the comments underneath, there's no mention of rape or anything like that. So what there is someone commenting a year later saying Heiko Khoo does have a history of doing things like this though. I knew him years ago, and if he is still as he was then he must still be his usually selfish, self-obsessed person he always was. I have never known Khoo to do anything selfless, and it appears he is still very much like that. So that was 11 years ago, and that is exactly the same behaviour that we see today from his anti-lockdown protests. However, a year after that comment was made, in February 2012, this article came out by a guy called Jonathan Klein, and he's talking about rape within this international Marxist tendency, this organization, and why he feels entitled to publicize rape allegations publicly when it seems like they didn't have a problem with these rape allegations while they were in the group. It was only after they've been removed from the group that they've brought these issues to light. It's very confusing and difficult to find everything to do with this, because when you click on the links, so you just see that these forums that this was all discussed on have gone blank. It looks like they've just been wiped. So it's quite difficult to get to the original sources. So this guy called Jonathan Klein, another ex-member of the organization, he says, on this website, an internet community that discusses small left groups, somebody who calls himself Leon T puts forward what I think appears to be the IMT leadership's attempt to internally and to close sympathizers dismiss the rape allegations. It's worth analyzing this effort. This is what Leon T writes. Notice that throughout this, it's just men making the accusations, just like the silent vigil. It was men who went and initiated the chaos, and this is kind of exactly what's going on here. The allegations made by Heiko Khoo and a clique of expelled members of the IMT are completely false. This is a part of a smear campaign by Heiko Khoo and some ex-members to blackmail the tendency to readmit them, or else. I have reviewed all documents and testimonies by the witnesses and accused and find little to no validity in them. Just as a few examples, the situation took place over 2 years ago and has only been brought up since the expulsions. No official legal action was taken at the time. The accusers refused to allow anyone to question the so-called victim. The accusers said they would gladly sweep this under the table if they were readmitted, thus making them complicit in the act if it indeed happened. No one actually witnessed a rape, but a room full of very drunk comrades with different degrees of clothing on, including the so-called victim. And then Heiko Khoo is a megalomaniac, and ever since his expulsion a few years ago has sworn to slander the IMT and bring it down. In many similar ways, he is similar to the case of Atlee Yarrow and the SPUSA after his expulsion. That was posted on the 27th of February 2012, and then on the 7th of March 2012, someone who was officially from the IMT, called Birgit, she responds with this long piece here, and she says, I've just seen on karlmarx.net a document signed by Jonathan Klein called Reply to what seems to be the IMT's defense against the rape allegations. I do not want to comment on the arguments he puts forward. He has, however, not the right to say things that are not true, and he has not the right to make personal attacks, especially against comrades who are not in a position where they can defend themselves. So an example is the experience of a young Swedish comrade who was raped many years ago by a South African comrade. At an international control commission, the Swedish comrade was subject to the type of interrogation that would be unacceptable if done by the police or a court of law in Sweden. After that, the South African was suspended for 2 years and the whole thing was silenced. Nothing was done to use this dreadful event to clarify the gravity of this issue to the whole organisation. Rape, just like all other political issues, must be dealt with openly. And then Birgit's response is, so that's a quote from Jonathan, and this is Birgit's response. I have, as Jonathan knows very well, had very serious political difference with Peter Taff and his supporters in the old CWI and parted company with them long ago. There were many things wrong with the way that the organisation worked, and I've criticised them openly at the time when they happened. But it is wrong to invent stories and to claim that some things happened when they never happened. He then says that this was hushed up by the leadership and the rapist was never punished properly. Rape is a serious accusation. If question was not ignored, there was an internal investigation, and I was a member of the Commission of Inquiry which was formed to find the facts. The commission went into this very thoroughly and interviewed both the girl in question and the man for quite a long time. In the end, we found that the accusation of rape was not true, therefore there was no question of a cover-up or any disciplinary measures. Jonathan says that the female Swedish comrade was raped by a South African comrade and states this as a fact. But how does he know? Was he present at the rape? I do not think he was. Was he present when we talked with the two individuals? I know he was not. In other words, what he presents as a fact is not a fact at all, but only his personal opinion. If Jonathan had any proof of the rape allegation, he should have presented them to the investigation commission 25 years ago. He did not because he didn't have any proof then, and he does not have any now. 25 years later, he is playing the part of judge as well as jury. This is not to be honest. What he writes is a personal attack upon me. I am used to being attacked by all kinds of people. I am, however, still here and can defend myself. But the South African comrade, whose name he also tries to dirty, is not able to defend himself because he has been reported dead. Maybe Jonathan will say he has not slandered anybody because he does not use any name. He just writes about a South African comrade. But I know who he means, and so do other people. That is what I call slander. It is not okay that somebody keeps silent for 25 years and then attacks someone who is reported dead. As for myself, I have been active in the movement for 33 years. No doubt I have made many mistakes, but to tell lies was never one of them. I remember the South African comrade concerned. He was a black comrade with an outstanding record in the revolutionary movement. He was in South Africa when he was accused, and he came back to face the charges. This was at the height of the apartheid period, when it was very difficult and dangerous to get in and out of South Africa. He could have refused to come to answer the charges, but he did not do so. He came as he was asked to do and answered all of our questions. It was very clear to us that he was not guilty of what he was accused of. Jonathan Klein says that the man was kept out of the organisation for 2 years. That is also not true, as he was found not guilty. The question of sanctions did not arise. He went back to South Africa, where he continued his revolutionary work. Whatever gossip about me Jonathan wants to bring to the marketplace, I cannot care less about, but the South African comrade is dead and cannot defend himself. Birgit, Denmark. Like I say, we see Heiko Khoo using the death and rape of Sarah Everard and her silent vigil that was set up afterwards. He used that to promote his anti-lockdown agenda. He was removed from the bandstand by the women shouting, "Not your place, not your place," and then he felt entitled enough to come back and continue the chaos as with a group of women who were then all endorsing his second appearance there. And this just smacks of exactly the same. Heiko Khoo gets removed from this group. He's never brought up any rape issues. He goes on this entitled tirade, starts bringing up issues that he's heard about, probable rumors, and he uses them for his own agenda to attempt to destroy the organization that he was just expelled from. So all what I've just read there should inform the rest of his behavior that I've been witness to. And the reason why I'm including that is because it just shows this pattern of behavior where it's as if he is this infiltrator where he will pretend to be a Marxist. He's obviously knowledgeable on it, so it's very easy for him to go to Speaker's Corner and pretend to be this Marxist. But as soon as he is asked to switch sides by whoever is controlling him, he does. And all of a sudden he goes from opposing fascists to working with those exact same fascists that he once opposed and was arrested for opposing, and put in jail once for opposing. So let's see a little bit more about Heiko Khoo from... So who is he? His first memory of Speaker's Corner is from his Malaysian Chinese father's shoulder. He was apparently at the fall of the Berlin Wall, and I think he also said he was at Tiananmen Square. So he's got these global connections and revolutionary connections, according to him. He organizes and runs a Karl Marx tour.
World unite. Comrades and the curious gather in central London for a Karl Marx walk.
You can see him here.
Stops include
on that tour.
Red Lion pub in Soho, where Marx and Friedrich Engels.
Here he is doing a little speech, telling the camera a little bit about this tour and what it's all about. Back in 2010, he was on the students' protest. So this is 10 years ago. So he's like a 40-year-old here, joining a students' protest and trying to lead it with speeches.
Where they know that the last demonstration resulted in a violent conflict, and they claim for 2 weeks now, 2 fucking weeks, they've been talking about the violence at Millbank.
Exactly like a Pied Piper, who he has no place there, and he's just leading these students down a path that they might not necessarily want to go, but like it should be students who are leading this protest and making the speeches. What the hell is he doing there? In March 2018, here he is. Tommy Robinson came to Speaker's Corner for the first time to read out a speech by neo-Nazi Martin Sellner. Here he is opposing his attendance, and here he is getting his hat nicked. And then removed by the crowd. If we come to 2020, 12th of March, so this is at the beginning of the pandemic, he had very different opinions on lockdown to what we see him now at the COVID conspiracy protests. So let's have a little listen to what he has to say here.
I don't know how many times we've heard take back control of our borders, our money, our laws. And yet, when Italy locked down 16 million people in the epicenter of the European outbreak of the coronavirus epidemic, tens of planes left Milan and other airports in the area and landed in Britain completely uncontrolled by health officials, swab testing, even the simple thermal temperature records. It's totally insane. And I'm in favor of open borders, but this is a health epidemiological issue for the entire world.
See that? It's insane not to lock down your borders. And I agree, if there's people who are infected with this pandemic and we're largely, it hasn't reached the UK yet, the most sensible thing would be to close off our borders. We live on an island, which is such a privilege in such circumstances. In mainland Europe, for instance, they have freedom of movement. In fact, we had freedom of movement, but we could have easily stopped people from getting in through planes, and then you just can't drive here. So we could have easily isolated ourselves, just like New Zealand, and had deaths in the hundreds or even less compared to what we do have, deaths in the hundreds of thousands.
See, their theory is, if you let this go through the population
without really taking as many draconian measures,
then
you could sort of take it on the chin, take it all in one go and allow the disease to move through the population.
The problem lies in this: an epidemic will spread automatically unless measures are taken to control it. Up to 20% of the workforce could be off work. Their highest case assumption is 80%.
So he's very, very, very for lockdowns, and he makes this excellent case for it, bringing in China. So let's just see a little bit more of what he has to say here.
All this a people's war against the virus. It's perfectly true that people don't like the idea of a lockdown. They think it might be, oh God, we're emulating totalitarian China. Actually, That's not how the people in China regarded it, and that's not how we should regard it. We're dealing with an epidemic which is uncontrollable at present, except by the type of quarantine measures been introduced in Italy now and in China, and the type of getting ahead, proactive action that needs to be taken to contain and defeat the virus. You know, you're only as safe as the weakest link, so if Britain is saying we're not going to control the borders, how are you going to stop the spread of the disease to other countries from Britain? Reaction and proactive policies. So proactive gets ahead of the situation in order to protect the maximum numbers.
So there you go. He's very, very, very pro-lockdown. Come to November 2020, Tommy Robinson comes to Speaker's Corner again.
Shut up! Shut up!
And he is here opposing him
When I stood up here,
the second time.
the last time you came here, your thugs attacked me, and you lied on television, on Russia Today, claiming that nobody had...
If you listen carefully, you can hear Gavin Malone in the background, I believe, kind of heckling him. Also, check out Danny Roscoe here. He'll be relevant in a little bit later on.
Shut up, you I'm at Speaker's Corner. I'm speaking. I've got a right to speak. I've got a right to... So are you, my friend. Everybody wanks. If you don't wank, I might explain why you're...
So there he is arguing about, with one of the Tommy Robinson fans about wanking. And then here's footage of his arrest here. So he is somewhere around here. You'll see him in a second. Yep. So that's Haiku there.
I'll ring him now. I'm not going home. You can't tell me where to go. No, I'm not. I'm going home.
And Gavin Malone was right there. You just saw his face. But you can see now Heiko Khoo being removed
I'm going to go and get my quick.
and arrested.
I've been speaking for 40 years. This guy is being a fascist to try and undermine Speaker's Corner.
Let's go. Arrested. The current breach of the peace you're making.
What chance? Let's
Go.
That guy has appeared here.
So he flops down. He gets arrested for breach of the peace, for opposing Tommy Robinson for the second time, literally calling him a fascist. Over Christmas, however, of that year, 2020, he turned up to Jeremy Corbyn's house with his friend Piers Corbyn, where Daily Mail reports on it as if Jeremy Corbyn's breaking lockdown rules when he just gets doorstepped by his brother and Heiko Khoo. And this is the beginning of the change. And you see at the bottom of the article, some people do talk about this and describe it correctly. And it's just interesting that Daily Mail leave these comments at the bottom of the article because no one obviously reads this far, so I'm only going to read this bit. One Twitter user said, "I've got to say, if this was my brother, I'd be a bit cross at him, turning up and videoing me to make crank points." Another suggested Corbyn was simply being awkwardly polite after being doorstepped by his COVID-denying brother Piers, who also brags in the video about being arrested 7 times at anti-lockdown demonstrations. So within 1 month, he's gone from, within 9 months since he made the Double Down video, he's gone from anti-lockdown to, pro-lockdown to anti-lockdown with Piers Corbyn, and within 1 month, it seems like he's gone from opposing fascists to working with one who is Piers Corbyn, who also works with fascists. So on March the 2nd, a week and a bit before the silent vigil, he's arrested.
Illegal ground. Breaking the Human Rights Act, Part 10 and 11, the Human Rights Act. Right? So you're saying it's not allowed to have a demonstration. You do not know the law.
You are being lied to by senior officers they do not know, or they are deliberately breaking the law. I don't know which one it is, but one way or another, you are also responsible for your actions. It's not good enough for you to turn around and say, we're told to do this.
Nuremberg Code.
I am a journalist. I showed you my journalist card. You've ignored it, and you've still issued me a PCN illegally.
Go home, mate.
Why should I go home? Why should I? They came to me and grabbed me. I'm leaving them alone. He asked me to make a statement. I'm making my statement. How do you know I'm completing my statement?
That's Sean Finch in the background there.
No, but equally, I'm not going to stand there for 24 hours.
You asked, you said, when you made your arrest statement, you said to me that I should make a statement. He asked me to make a
And notice how he won't stop speaking. So even though he's told what he's arrested for, he will continually keep talking and being belligerent, just to cause as much chaos. So he's kind of live controlling the narrative throughout the whole thing. So the gullible people watching will think that he's not been told why he's arrested, but he's told multiple times he's arrested for breaching COVID regulations.
They're not going to get arrested. Anything I say.
Go there, but the next stage arrest.
Arrested for what?
You've been given a ticket.
Arrested for what? I haven't received the ticket.
Now.
You haven't given me the ticket.
You will get that in the mail.
No, you wrote out a ticket. You can give me the ticket now.
I do. I had to go home now.
So I haven't
It is issued by the court. It will be sent to the home address you have provided within the next several weeks. Check your post.
You're basically saying that you want to intimidate me into leaving the area, even though I'm a journalist. What is the arrest for?
You need to go.
What's the arrest for? Why are you arresting me? What's the charge?
You're continuing to commit
Sam
the
from
offence.
Subject Access there.
Under coronavirus
regulations. I was making a statement.
Siraj from Actual Coverage.
Yes, it is on tape.
This has been filmed by William Coleshill.
To the officers.
You can explain it in the court.
No. Why are you doing it like that? That hurts. Why are you doing it like that? Was I fighting you?
Constant whining, just like, dude, you had enough opportunity to be removed or to remove yourself, and you refused, so you're going to get arrested, just like the women speak at the silent vigil.
To go home numerous times.
The time is now 3 p.m. We are now under arrest.
For what charge? What charge? What charge? You've arrested me. What's the charge?
You do not have to say anything. You may have a defense. You do not
I want to say something. I was actually... No, I want you to charge me. You have to charge me. What is the charge? I'm not going to stand up here if you don't charge me. You are not charged. You haven't charged me. You have not charged me. What am I? So this is illegal what you're doing now.
That's Mark Martin, another Tommy Robinson supporter who's continuously filming these protests.
What am I being charged with? What am I being charged with?
Like, they actually do tell him over and over again. It's just his non-stop voice is the problem. So like I say, this was, I think it was the 13th of March, I can't remember the exact date now, but I released this on the 5th of April of him being removed from the silent vigil.
Sarah was breaking the rules that night. She was right to be bold.
After he's claiming Sarah was murdered for breaking COVID rules. This is another guy who's just everywhere, like his handler. He's been chanted down from the bandstand by the police, by everybody in the crowd, saying that your place, the police will go in and just usher him away. There's Subject Access again.
Moving in.
There's plenty of journalists here who obviously saw this happening. There's Steve, you see him later.
You brutalised that girl in foot 2 weeks ago. Dragged her and ripped her arms out. Put this feet in
Like, I can't actually listen to this bit anymore because it is really triggering. So you can watch that if you want. But later on, Here he is with Patsy
Haiku
Stevenson.
jumps down into the bed of flowers in order to share the megaphone with his friend from Speaker's Corner, who has an important announcement to make.
And so when I saw him do this,
I've been speaking at Speaker's Corner for 35 years.
so he's about to share his megaphone with Steve from Speaker's Corner, a mad Tommy Robinson fan. And after he's been like assaulted by them numerous times, there he is.
That's why you can.
That just blew my understanding of the world wide open. Like, hey man, fair enough you've been in these anti-lockdown protests, but like that's one change. But to go from that to working with fascists when desperately and adamantly opposed them numerous times at Speaker's Corner, it's like, what the hell is Heiko Khoo? What's his deal? What the hell is going on here? So that's what led me to make the video. And then a week later, here he is speaking directly to all the kind of Tommy Robinson patriotic alternative lot. And he knows it.
Did the Duchess of Cambridge?
He just doesn't care. So you've got that flag there, a white Pendragon.
For the vigil in Clapham Common. That fucking camera.
There it is there with the patriotic alternative. So he knows what he's doing here. And so if we come back to this number 7, Haiku, is similar to the case of Atlee Yarrow and the SPUSA after his expulsion. And the response in defense of Haiku is, after his expulsion, Atlee Yarrow joined a white nationalist group in the USA, hardly comparable to Haiku, who has continued to passionately argue for Marxism. To compare him to a fascist and call him a megalomaniac is simply slander. So that was like about a decade ago, where someone compared him to someone who was removed from the left and then they went straight to a white nationalist group. That is exactly the same. And it's not slander. Like, he's literally just done that. And when I read that from 10 years ago, it was like, whoa, this just confirms everything that I've been saying about Haiku since the vigil. Like, what the hell? And then shortly after the vigil, I was going back onto live streams again to discuss what happened there on the free speech live streams that I used to go to onto, which were all connected to Speaker's Corner. And the words from Ralph Massalamani were very, very eye-opening. So listen to this.
Yes.
Riot.
What's wrong with using political protests and hijacking them?
What's wrong with using a silent vigil where people are
all
grieving?
Sorts of things. People right now.
A silent vigil where people are grieving is not
but
somewhere to politicize. That is exactly what the far right claimed when they blamed it on Antifa.
But
so I'm holding the far right to their own standards, and it is fucking disrespectful as fuck to go to a silent vigil and expect your voice to be heard
you don't need a speech,
and to be able to promote your
can you see the,
March
can you
the
see
20th
the
NRX psyop.
But listen, all the people who went there disagreed with you, right?
No, they didn't. All the people that went there
they all went there
agreed with me because they removed Haiku from the fucking stage first, and then once it got dark and people took it.
Haiku did his job. Haiku did a good job.
Haiku knew what his job was.
The chaos
Haiku
and the
did
darkness.
a fantastic job.
Haiku knew what his job was, and Haiku did a fantastic job.
Then that's when the mood changed.
You sound jealous
when the
and envious of people
manipulations
like Haiku.
changed. That's when the
Apparently
mood
I'm
changed,
jealous.
Ralph.
Now, can
I
say
turned
that?
down
Okay,
$6
so
grand a
if you
month
look at your history
from
the
these
last 5 to 8 years,
freaks
10 years,
so I
trying
could
to
bring
get
you
famous
the
of
truth.
Tommy, of all the far right, that dried up for you.
Is it like, I don't need attention. I'd rather go back to my old job, save up some money and play poker and make it on my own. But now that I know the truth, I think I just couldn't live with myself without telling that truth, hoping that People who have organizations or are influential need to recognize that if you are trying to challenge the status quo, you will get infiltrated, and you need to protect yourselves from that infiltration. You need to learn what the NRX is and make sure that they don't steer you in ways or cause chaos within your organization, and just protect yourself, basically. Like, this isn't for me. I've given up so much to tell you what I found out the hard way, so you don't have to. So let's move on. 1st of April, he was platformed on this Labour grassroots movement.
Heiko, who was on our show, when was it, last week or the week before, I can't remember, but Heiko has been struggling to speak at Speaker's Corner because of the regulations there about speaking. Heiko, are you in favour of the vaccine certificates?
I'm totally opposed to the vaccine certificates. A number of reasons, obviously, bullet points I have to make because we don't have much time.
So they're talking about vaccine certificates, which is something that I'm actually not for. I don't believe in ID for everybody. It just negatively affects minorities more so than others. However, what I am against is platforming people like Haiku, megalomaniacs who don't care about issues, obviously, because they can switch what they believe in on a dime. I don't know why I said dime, I'm not American. But yeah, the Labour Party should be having nothing to do with Heiko Khoo because, well, like, more reasons will become apparent in future.
What I see for myself,
a week after that,
I see Piers Corbyn from day one walking the street.
Here he is with Ramesh and David Curtin, Piers Corbyn, loads of other far-right agitators like that guy at the start here. He's always at Tommy Robinson protests. That guy was at the vigil there. I think he was at the vigil. There's just people all over this that are just full of toxicity, going to places where they just don't have a right to go to, in my opinion. At the end of the month, there was another riot on Hyde Park. Here's Haiku here, bleating through his megaphone, while this guy, if we just play it forward a small bit, it's as if he's got his finch. In fact, he does. He clenches his fist. Watch how it's kind of unclenched at the start, and then he goes to clench it. And that woman that he stood right in front of staring at, she's lost her hat. I'm pretty sure she was the one who had her baton stolen and was punched in the face earlier on and then moved back. But look at the way he's staring at her. Like, what is Haiku doing at this place when you've got big, fat men staring down women clenching their fists as if ready to fucking punch them? And multiple women police officers got punched by men here, and he's just there barking at the police, saying that it's all their fault. It's like, no, mate, you're having an illegal gathering, and when he was first advocating for China's response to the pandemic, the police would be much worse to these protesters. They would. I mean, it goes without saying. So he knows what is needed to prevent a pandemic. He said so on Double Down News, and he's Chinese. He knows what exactly it's like, and he's just defending the opposite of that, the toxic opposite of that, where men are literally punching women, and he's got nothing to say about it.
It's been
And
one of
then
the most
in May,
sort of difficult
he was
discussions
platformed
to hold
again.
However, I think we need to hold a discussion about this because it's important that we don't just have our own little camps who jeer at each other. And what will happen when we come out of lockdown? Will we be able to heal from this?
And I think he is genuine. It sounds like he's genuine, but he's genuinely being manipulated. Like,
to start the show, I've got Heiko, who was on that march, and I'll have to ask you, Heiko, why were you on that march, and do you think that there is a danger of these anti-lockdown protests infecting people? Do you think it's a public health risk?
So he platforms him at the start, and then he also platforms him at the end, and it sounds like he gets comments like, "Hey, why does Haiku get sick?"
The death rate was far lower and within the norm.
I might have to finish on that for you, Heiko, because I'm getting accused of being biased.
No, that's fine. I didn't have.
He's the only person who gets to speak twice. I think he actually gets he gets 2 questions at the start as well. And there's one of these chats that I saw where Haiku was on at the start and Jeremy Corbyn comes on later, and like, I'm not sure Jeremy Corbyn would have done that. In fact, at the start of this one, he said it was difficult for him to find people who wanted to go on because they didn't agree that they should have been platforming people like Haiku. Yeah, I think it was the previous one. I don't think Jeremy Corbyn would have gone on it if he'd have known, because there's a clip later on where Haiku just, like, Jeremy Corbyn is not Haiku's friend. Like, he will infiltrate Jeremy Corbyn and co-opt his protests in the same way that he will do for anyone else. It's just this mad, entitled, megalomaniac behaviour, which was described in those articles from the start. So here he is. So this is him publishing his police interview where he just talks a load of random shit where, dude, you have the right to remain silent. But we're not going to listen to all 20 minutes of that. I'm just going to read a bit out I transcribed, because it's it's just nuts what he was saying in this police witness statement room. So for a number of months, I've been systematically targeted by police for harassment and internment illegally. The evidence for that is the fact that people have arrested me on a number of occasions and dropped the charges. I hope it doesn't happen. I was falsely accused of having instigated the Sarah Everard protest, which I did not, and the conflict which broke out as a consequence of that. The thread that I made just shows that up to be a complete lie. And that was repeated in the official report to Priti Patel, which falsely accuses myself and Piers Corbyn for being, if you like, instigators or some sort of spark that starts it off. And they falsely accuse me of saying all police should be murdered or are murderers. Like, every single thing that he's saying is a lie, and it's on video. The consequence of that is, I think there's a large number of police officers who regard me as some sort of antagonist, as a police officer said to me last week, who's constantly trying to cause trouble with the police. On the 24th of April, the police launched a riot against the same band that were playing yesterday in Hyde Park. There's extensive footage of that, and I've taken this up with the IOPC. This is the clip where the woman gets her baton stolen and her hat knocked off. So you can see her hair there. It looks like she's the same police officer that had standing in front of the man with his fist clenched. What is so toxic? I've stated openly on social media that I am gathering witness statements on that riot. It's like, there's no need for witness statements when the video's out. About 40 police attacked the band that were playing yesterday, and when they did so, they were then pushed out of the park, and the media presented this as if the people had attacked the police. Like, the police had bottles thrown at their faces at point blank range, where blood was pouring from them. When in fact the police attacked the people, and any response by the people was self-defense, or may have, as I wrote to Cressida Dick, may have been the consequence of undercover police operations. So he's getting very conspiratorial now. A charge that he's thrown my way, saying that I'm a conspiracy theorist. It's like, no, dude, I just say what I see on video. So yeah, and so why he would say that when giving a police statement during his arrest when he was arrested for playing Benny Hill, I I mean, he wasn't arrested for that. He was arrested again for breaking lockdown rules, regulations. So the way that they frame this shit is just mental. So then, yeah, as I was saying before, even his family and supposedly longtime friends aren't off limits for the abusive behaviours of the COVID-idiot cult. Haiku and peers infiltrate and troll an NHS protest asking for a fair wage rise. So they were on Parliament Square.
What? The dance thing.
We got God's blessing come our way.
Sean Finch. God's blessing, he refers this to.
Sean, God's blessing come our way. NHS pay demo.
He knows it's an NHS pay demo.
NHS pay demo.
What?
Yeah.
Oh, fuck off.
Come our way.
Pay fucking what? The dance in empty wards. Oh, fucking hell. I just get out.
Piers is there,
just got on my
Jeremy
back,
Corbyn's brother. They all step into action. It's like infiltrate. I didn't actually use footage of this because the look on Jeremy Corbyn's face, I just thought, like, it's just sickening. Like, nurses have been going through a fucking shit time for like over a year because of the pandemic, having to work their socks off to save lives, and they deserve extra pay, and they deserve to be listened to. They deserve to have their voices heard. And I'll just read through this thread of my description of what happened. So Piers, Corbyn, Haiku, and a few dozen of their cult are currently trolling Jeremy Corbyn and a group of nurses who are asking for a 15% pay rise outside Downing Street. Haiku's entitlement with a megaphone literally knows no bounds. This isn't about you or the vaccines. I'm not posting any footage of this. I'd be finding this a little triggering myself, even if Jeremy wasn't there supporting the NHS. But I am finding this exceptionally triggering due to the familial relationships involved. I can't imagine what Jeremy must be feeling as he manages to deal with the chaos with massive amounts of dignity. I'm not there, by the way, but the footage is available online. I have a copy which I may or may not use for a future documentary. I'm probably not going to use it. After going back to review the start, the Haiku cult were sat in the shade under the trees on Parliament Square as a small group of nurses and Jeremy walked by towards Downing Street. The Haiku cult get up, follow and pretend to join in. Haiku puts himself front and center next to Jeremy, basically removing the position of a nurse and putting himself right there next to him. Obviously that got a bit awkward as Haiku didn't have a clue what was happening, and he was taking the place of the nurses, also blocking the banner. Jeremy remained polite throughout, even when calmly telling him we're not here for vaccines. It then got real awkward, and the failed on-the-spot infiltration attempt turned into an all-out entitled cry about freedoms while taking away the freedoms of the nurses to protest for a pay rise. Unfortunately, the nurses didn't spend long at Downing Street because they probably had fucking work to do, and the belligerent Haiku Nazi cult got their way. This is the literal vulture mentality they have. They didn't even stop to think. I would have loved to have been a fly on the wall when they heard about the silent vigil. Like, they wouldn't have stopped to think about that. That loads of people saw them giving out like flyers at the tube stations and bus stops afterwards. It's like any opportunity. It's like this programmed into their head. Their only mission is to infiltrate and co-opt and spread their toxic message as far and wide as they're possible by any means necessary. And so just like at the protest on Hyde Park where he was barking through his megaphone and female police officers were getting punched in the face, he's doing the same again, almost bursting a blood vessel.
The police launched a police riot, and we protected your officers, by the way. We stood in the way of a few hotheads who themselves might have been police agents. We stood in the way, and we protected you from violence. Even the officer who had blood on his head that day.
There were some people doing that, but there's always people doing that, and that isn't a tactic to defend the police or protect the police. That is a tactic to gaslight the police. So it's like, hey, we're your friends, but really they would if they had the chance, they would not be. So this is where it gets very interesting, because in the same way that Haiku didn't respect the democratic process within the IMT earlier, he doesn't respect the democratic process here. He goes to the Labour conference and he targets the left-wing section of the Labour Party. He never attacks Keir Starmer. He never goes for the centrists. He's here. Someone's doing a speech on stage, and Haiku just gets up and starts interrupting. It's like, dude, what are you doing? Someone's making a speech on stage. You don't have the right to do this.
Have a form of proportional representation. I think the only other country that has first past the vote is Belarus.
So he's been held back by two women.
We're in poor company. So I think ultimately PR means everyone.
But that won't stop him.
Everyone has an incentive to vote, and I think that's good for democracy. And we know the vast majority of the public, and definitely members, are way ahead of the curve, more progressive than their elected representatives. So
starts climbing over people's sitting
that representation, that
so he can get to the front. And then he interrupts. You can't really hear what he's saying, but it puts a stop to the proceedings. And then eventually he gets...
Stop it. I can film him. I can film him.
Eventually gets kicked out. And it gets a little bit violent because he puts up such a fight to prevent himself from being removed. Exactly, what level of entitlement do you think you have? So here he is on the floor. And the interesting thing is, Piers Corbyn's Facebook page has recently been removed. I wish I had made this video about 3 or 4 days earlier, because what I was going to include here is the bit that comes after this, where I checked through this whole page. This bit wasn't uploaded to Piers Corbyn's Facebook page, but the after effects was. So you just see Heiko Khoo with blood on his face and bitching about what happened, how he's been abused and not had his right to be heard. Like, and it's like, dude, that's not how it happened. You just you took over the event in the same way you were trying to take over the IMT, in the same way you were trying to take over the silent vigil, the same way you were trying to take over the nurses' protest. But yeah, it would have been interesting to show that level of entitlement where he's going to the police and trying to get people arrested, and then a couple of days later,
They've been assaulted us. We had tickets to get inside here.
Got it all on film, guys.
My voice to speak. And they shoved us and pushed us.
And there's one little one here, one little middle class sweat here who kicked him on the way out.
Yes, I got it. Officer arrested. The police are looking for him. The police are looking for him. He punched you in the face. I got a crime reference number.
Got a crime reference number?
Police are looking for you.
He's just desperate to get people arrested. And the same day that happened, Julie Hartley Brewer is promoting his Karl Marx walking tour. And so is Steve from Speaker's Corner, the Tommy Robinson fan who was sharing Haiku's megaphone at the vigil. They're promoting, oh, gutted I missed this today. It's like, could you be any more obvious? Like, what is Julie Hartley Brewer? Why would she be interested in a Karl Marx walking tour? Like, come on. Like, what is going on here? So then comes to September the 30th, the following day that I posted those videos, and it's the sentencing of Sarah Everard's murderer. And who turns up? Heiko Khoo,
Corbyn, and I'm here with Heiko Khoo, and we said at the time of the Everett events that the corona rules were being used as a cover for this attack.
I just hope that none of the family
are, of course,
of Sarah Everard,
all of them are actually not about controlling a virus, but they are about controlling the public. They give all sorts.
Imagine. It's just sick. And then from behind a block, I have never met this man. Stop spreading lies about me. It's like, look, he's speaking into your ear after you've been sharing his megaphone for almost an hour. Like, come on, Patsy. Stop gaslighting the nation and just tell the truth. Call out these dickheads or admit you're an anti-lockdown protester. And then in October, they're outside the Australian embassy.
Yesterday we were outside the Old Bailey, and when we stood there and spoke, explaining...
Oh, yeah.
Thank you very much. If there's any other speakers who would like to speak... Oh.
So there is two far-right agitators, Andy Allen and Danny Roscoe. Danny Roscoe was stood behind Tommy Robinson the second time that Tommy Robinson came to Speaker's Corner, and Haiku was arrested that time. Like, what is he doing? Just, he's put all his like opposition of fascism to the side and just to work with them. And then at another protest, and then here he can be seen hugging Fiona Hind, who was also at the vigil. She's very much responsible for the events there as well, and she's also responsible for organising many of the anti-lockdown protesters personally herself, and she will openly admit that fact. She's been arrested multiple times for organising these protests. This was the video of Fiona. There she is there. They're just turning this into an anti-police riot instead of a silent vigil where they could remember, where the local community could remember and grieve for Sarah Everard. So then on November last year, I went to London to report on William Coleshill's trial. And look who's there filming me, Gavin Malone, Tommy Robinson supporter who was heckling Haiku when Tommy Robinson was at Speaker's Corner. And there is Haiku there. And the interesting bit was that when I was inside, they all came in. He was literally sat next to Gavin Malone inside the courthouse, outside the courtroom while we were waiting to be called in, and just defending his... Haiku claimed I was being childish and accusatory. I asked him if that was the same as his behaviour towards Tommy Robinson when he opposed his visit at Speaker's Corner, and I was surprised to hear Haiku admit it was the same, while he also claimed he was wrong about his past actions against Tommy Robinson. Malone was sitting next to him at the time, as many other supporters also came into the building. I mean, what can change such what seemed like someone who was a rational socialist, at least a very educated one? What can change someone's mind like that so quickly, especially after they've done that video on Double Down News where they're calling out the rational science? Hey, there's a pandemic outside our country and it's not reached us yet. Why don't we shut down the borders so then we can protect ourselves and not have hundreds of thousands of people die like Boris Johnson was suggesting, and that my videos and content have echoed since? It's like he's been bought off. And then they also infiltrate the Julian Assange protests, and listen to this guy in the background who makes his own comment.
Rash and different people being changed. I mean, in history, you can have one leader and then next leader move, next one, until such time as they restabilise power.
We need our January 6th. Genuine January 6th.
We need a real awakening of the people, but that's...
We need a January the 6th. We really do. We need an awakening of the people. So finally, I'm assuming you don't... This is a comment that I've seen under one of the articles on him written on 2014. I'm assuming you don't actually know Heiko Khoo, one of the most self-obsessed, paranoid, delusional and arrogant people you would ever meet. This was not a split in the IMT. It was the IMT removing a persistently disruptive and sectarian individual from its ranks. The fact that in the 4 years since you penned this piece of nonsense, the undone IMT has actually gone from strength to strength really does expose your ignorance in the whole matter. Haiku is not a Marxist in any other sense than he regurgitates huge chunks of Marx in an entirely dogmatic fashion and has no ability to analyze situations or behave in a reasonable fashion to other human beings. So that is my short or long review of the man that calls himself Heiko Khoo, and everybody needs to be aware of this man if he comes anywhere near you or your protest or your group or your organization or anything. Just stay away, ignore him, don't give him any attention. He will abuse that attention in a massive way. So thanks for watching. Laters.
I'm a neo-reactionary absolutist. I believe in a absolute world order, organized in a particular way.
When you're looking at a government is a corporation that owns a country. It just is. It's the same thing.
I'm Peter Thiel. I support people who are building new things. I'm not a politician, but neither is Donald Trump. And it's time to rebuild America.
Anything we can do to help this go along, and we're going to be there for you. And you'll call my people, you'll call me. It doesn't make any difference. We have no formal chain of command.